Hello, loves. Today I have compiled quite a few good stories. Let's get started. Story: Humans Are Weird. Gust incoming, came the distant shout from one of the humans down the massive canyon. GSTCK paused in her lecture and tucked her body close down to the lichen-covered rock she and her cluster of graduate students were perched on. The group fell silent as the ever-present canyon whined suddenly increased from its constant whispering to a brief roar. GSTCK felt the resulting pressure difference pushing her up and clung to the rock. It was highly unlikely that the wind would lift her mass, but she had to set a good example for her students. The cluster likewise twitched and the wind surged over their fuzzy heads. It finally died down, leaving their auditory membranes ringing with lingering vibrations. GSTCK was about to resume her measurements on the teal lichen that she was considering for domestication in their colonies in the roots above the canyon when one of her graduate students clicked an absently polite interjection. "Yes, TSCSS?" GSTCK asked without really turning her attention away from the lichen. "What are the humans doing?" TSCSS asked, holding up a clarifier in the direction of the mammals in question plus. GSTCK fought down a massive shrug of annoyance. As she expected, every one of her graduate students was now turned to focus down the canyon towards the docks where the human submarines surfaced to their crews out for light and air. GSTCK didn't know what the humans were doing. She quite frankly didn't care what the humans were doing. Their researches into the mining potential of the canyons and caverns were no doubt productive for the colony and the system in general, but had no effect whatsoever on her own work. Still, the web-like all-encompassing curiosity of a fuzzy young grad student was something to be harnessed and trained, not suppressed. "What do you observe?" GSTCK asked without looking up from her sample. "The humans are gathering at the end of the wave-riding bridge," one stated, taking the clarifier and studying the situation. "They all look very excited," another offered. GSTCK was about to inquire how they determined excitement in a bipedal mammal, but another student interjected. "Their large motor movements are faster and shorter than usual," he said, "and their voices have risen in pitch and frequency." "It is only the dock crews," another clarified. "There are no subs docked at the moment. They are arranging themselves in some specific order. They are flexing their muscles. That means they are preparing for sudden movement, not bracing for impact." The wind bore. The careful observations broke down into chitterings of stress and excitement that finally ceased in pulling GSTCK away from her work. She stalked over to the student holding the clarifier. "Do remember that these humans are trained professionals and will not stupidly endanger themselves," she reminded them as she took the device. There was an uneasy chitter of agreement as she studied the situation. The wind bore was indeed seeming to menace the humans on the dock. The high wind gusts in the canyon, coming on top of the steady, constant breeze, created a long series of tall wave crests that bore down the canyons. It was thanks to these unpredictable and powerful surges that the Trisk science teams had to limit themselves to these high ledges, far from the water's edge. The humans, sturdier and more endothermic, had simply built their docks to withstand the bore waves and trained to work around them. One of the modifications they had insisted was necessary was one wave-riding bridge from one dock to another. This bridge consisted of individual floats that were connected with cables and rested on the water's surface. The design did indeed negate much of the stress caused by the waves, but the design had always struck GSTCK as impractical. She could not conceive how the bipeds, always on the verge of falling over, could hope to use the bridge during the bore waves. It looked like she was about to get her answer. The humans were clustered at the end of the wave-riding bridge. Her students had described the situation well. The bore wave struck the end of the bridge and the structure began to undulate. With a resounding whoop from his massive lungs, the leading human rushed out onto the bridge. He made it nearly a quarter of the way across before falling off into the cold waters of the canyon. Frantic chittering broke out from her students and GSTCK raised a griping appendage sternly to silence them. "How are the other humans reacting?" she demanded. There was a long pause as her students considered this question. "They are laughing," one observed. Another human has already replaced him on the bridge. She fell into. None of the other humans are offering to aid them. The fallen ones appear to be laughing as well. They are swimming for the soft dock. The first humans is running back to the main cluster. They have formed a queue. Not all of the humans are participating. The cluster fell silent to mull over these observations, and GSTCK handed the clarifier back to its owner with a profoundly fatalistic shrug. Below them, human after human was hurtling themselves across the undulating wave-riding bridge in what appeared to be an utterly futile attempt to get across it. It was obvious that this was some bizarre form of play behavior. There was nothing at the other end of the bridge to tempt them, and their dinghy was conveniently docked beside the main cluster of humans. GSTCK knew very well that her own cluster of highly educated university graduates was not going to achieve anything more practical than processing this display of hubris and endothermy on the part of the humans. She might as well pack up her tools and return to her mobile office while they observed the cacophony on the docks. She had several grant proposals to write, and something productive might as well be accomplished. Story: My abuser will get hurt, it's all my fault. My name is Lily, I'm a 19-year-old female. I was sexually abused from the age of 8 until I was 13 years old. I told my parents when I was 15, and they confronted my abuser, who is the biological parent of my younger sibling. I am now 19, and I've been dealing with the aftermath and suppressing the trauma ever since I was 15. When I was 16 or 17, I was sent to a mental hospital due to my suicidal thoughts. I couldn't stop thinking about what happened to me and how it could have been prevented. While in the mental hospital, I was sexually assaulted by another patient the day before I was discharged. This led to me almost being set back due to the trauma. The following year, I was assaulted in my math class, and no one did anything about it. I started to believe that this was something that only happened to me. I graduated last month, but I'm still not over what happened. I've let a friend of my parents know that I'm still struggling with this. I still have nightmares, couldn't wear dresses until I was 18, hated sleeping in my bed, felt uncomfortable being naked, had flashbacks during sex, and felt resentment towards my younger sibling because of what their parent did to me. My parents asked if I wanted my abuser beaten up, and I said yes. Now, I'm scared because my sexual abuser is still in my sibling's life, not mine. I see him often, and this is what I feel is truly holding me back in this whole process. I feel so alone in this. I pressed charges as soon as I turned 18, and the whole process is still ongoing, taking longer than expected. I feel so guilty, hypervigilant, and afraid all over again. Because of this, my suicidal ideation has returned, and now everyone knows I'm suicidal. I'm leaving for college in the fall with my dog, and that's the only thing I'm looking forward to. Story: My creepy stepdad wants me to twerk in front of him. Me, 19F, and my stepdad, 48M. I really don't know what to do. I want to tell my mother, but I'm scared. 1 year ago, my mother escaped a bad relationship with my biological dad, who was abusive all my life, and then she found my stepdad. Let's call him Jeff. I grew up liking dancing. Having taken some classes, I could say I'm pretty good at it. Usually, when I'm comfortable around people, I dance. I like doing this one dance with my mom and sisters that kinda looks like I'm twerking from the back. I do not do that type of dance in front of men, so please do not say I was doing it on purpose in front of him. My stepdad did not know about that dance, or he didn't. 4 weeks ago, I was dancing with my little sister to some music while doing chores. No boys were around, and it was just me and my little sister, so I did the dance. I did not see my stepdad walking into the house from the back door, not until my sister stopped dancing, and I looked behind me to see Jeff standing there. I instantly stopped, obviously embarrassed, and my sister and I went back to doing chores. That is not what I found creepy, but what I found really creepy and inappropriate was when a day later he asked to talk to me in his room. I really didn't want to, but I just wanted it to be over and done with because I do not like him. Once he brought me to his room, he said blankly with a straight voice, "Why don't you dance like that in front of me?" I got really uncomfortable and left the room. Leaving the house with my car, I did not feel comfortable with him home alone, so I left and went to a friend's house. That wasn't the first time he did something really creepy. Another time was when I was taking a shower and I heard a knock, so I yelled, "Yes." I did not hear anything, so I peeked my head from the shower only to see the doorknob trying to be opened. Luckily, it was locked. I knew it was him because after I yelled, "Stop," he had the audacity to say, "Why is the door locked?" Like, what the actual fuck? What do you think? After that, I told my mom about it, saying she needs to set boundaries or I am leaving and going no contact. I know that was a little dramatic, but I do not give a flying shit. He did so many creepy things to me, and my mom does nothing about it. The reason I'm scared to tell her is because she genuinely loves this dude, and I hate to be the reason she can't find love. I'm sorry for the end. I'm not good at English, and I'm really not wanting to talk about this because I'm still trying to recover from him asking me that and the previous things he's been doing. Right now, I'm staying at my grandma's. Story: My classmate's dad caused a lockdown at school. Hi. For this story, I think it's important to include context of what my school was like. It was a pre-K to 8th Catholic private school specifically targeted towards Latinos to improve graduation rates of this community, and the religious aspect was just thrown into it because one of the founders was a nun or something. Despite being a private school, it wasn't exactly the most ideal school. A lot of public schools were actually in a better condition. To paint the picture, my old school was the school where high schoolers came in to volunteer for service hours, and where Girl Scouts raised money to donate bikes and winter jackets to the elementary students. It wasn't located in necessarily the best area, which means we went into lockouts quite frequently. Mostly due to crime around the area or one of the nearby druggies yelling and getting aggressive. However, there were rarely any cases of the school itself being in direct danger. There was once a bomb threat a substitute made years ago, but that was one case over a course of 20+ years that place has been going for. Though, in 6th grade there were 2 lockdowns. The first one wasn't anything special really. A woman under the influence of drugs was basically trying to get into the school. Most likely to steal, as she has been able to sneak in and rob some items before. However, it was mostly precaution when we went into lockdown. After it was over and the woman had been arrested, staff members like school counselors had gone to classes and explained the situation calmly. The second lockdown, however, was very different. That one was actually terrifying. One of the girls at that school who I had known about since kindergarten had often complained to us about her dad. It wasn't unusual for kids to grow up in abusive households or vent to each other about their parents/family. She was no different. She obviously hated her dad and talked about how shitty he was towards her and her mom as well as her older sister, who was in 8th grade at the time of the lockdown. During the first few months of 6th grade she had been talking about how insane her dad was acting, such as breaking into their home while they were away and wrecking the place up. He was toxic and that was obvious to anyone she told. Well, while I was in Mexico for my cousin's quinceañera, my mom received an email that the school has gone into a lockdown. My mom was dismissive about it when I asked, and her being a teacher at that school, I'm sure she assumed it was a similar incident to the first lockdown that had happened just a few months ago. This was in February for reference. Once I got home around a week later, that girl was not in class. And some of my friends had rushed over to me, wanting to explain immediately what had happened. Apparently, her dad had gone to the school looking for that girl and her sister. What's unsettling is that he had been running from the cops after kidnapping that girl's mom and torturing her, as well as stabbing her uncle. And after that he was on the run for a while. He was arrested. I believe he was charged with assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder, kidnapping, burglary, assault, strangulation, assault, disfigurement, motor vehicle theft, and stalking. The girl and her family moved away and I haven't spoken to that girl in person since. From what I know she's doing a lot better, but nobody from my school has really stayed in contact with her. Regardless, knowing that such a dangerous individual was meaning harm came to a building full of children is scary. Story, My Neighbor Daisy. Okay, so my family and I had moved to the States briefly in the late 90s. Early aughts won't say when exactly, but around those times, because my grandfather was going to get his pension, retirement, and other stuff set up. So the point was that we went and rented a house. So yeah, we stayed there for about 1.5 years or so as my grandpa transferred all his paperwork and such. I didn't go to school in this time, and I spent a lot time playing outside, and that's where I met Mrs. Daisy. She was a lady that lived alone next door to us. Mrs. Daisy was a widow, had 2 adult sons that were horrible emo, and unfortunately she was also an alcoholic. I would see one of my older cousins I called uncle go over all the time and he would get plastered and stuff with her. I am sure drugs were used as well, but whatever, I was young and I liked this lady BC. She would give me toys, cookies, and sometimes even played with me. One day she gave me a doll that would sing Ring Around the Rosie. To say I loved this doll was an understatement. I adored this doll, and my neighbor Daisy ended up telling me that doll reminded her of me, so she thought I would love it and take care of it. I was excited. I thanked her 100x over and I slept, played, ate with this doll religiously. I still used to see my neighbor and try and play with her in her yard with my doll, but shortly after she had given me that doll, I saw less of her and saw my uncle go over more and more. I will admit I was a nosy kid. I knew the times my uncle was leaving the house and getting back, and he hated that BC I would tell my grandparents when they asked and he would lie to them. Anyways, I knew that sometimes he was at her house by 7 a.m. and he would come home until maybe minimum 1 a.m. the next day. I assume now they were having binge drinking parties, but I missed my neighbor and was sad I never really saw her as I used to, and since I wasn't allowed to go to her house I used to just wait by the fence that separated our driveway and her porch. But then one day, I saw the cops and someone take a stretcher out with a white blanket over someone.
Everyone in the neighborhood was outside. That's when the news spread that she was found dead by one of her sons. Then I remember my grandparents were talked to by some detectives. Also my uncle told me that I wasn't allowed to say that I saw him at the neighbors all the time before the cops had talked to my grandparents. I was so sad about my neighbor I stopped playing outside and just had my tea parties with my new doll inside the house. Now, after this day my uncle's drug and alcohol habits got so much worse. Like, I can't say everything here BC, it's so traumatizing just remembering what he put me, my other uncles, my grandparents, and even my mother through when he spiraled out of control. Now with my doll you had to hold her hands to make her sing. I wasn't allowed to make her sing around my uncle. BC, he would scream at me stuff like, why the fuck does she sing like a demon? Or tell my mom that the doll was possessed and sang another song, although she only sang the Ring Around the Rosie song.
I then started to have night terrors from all the stress with my uncle, but when I had the doll they seemed to ease. So this doll would be with me even more so, but it started to end up in odd places every morning. Like one day after I looked for her, she was right outside my uncle's room door. I grabbed her as quickly as possible and took her with me to the room I slept in with my mom and grandma. The one person who noticed all of this but didn't say a word was my grandma. This was an unspoken secret of the doll mysteriously disappearing on me and just appearing close proximity of my uncle, whether that was outside his room or if he was passed out drunk on the couch. Then one night this all came into a head. I woke up, my uncle was having a manic episode under the influence of God knows what. He was screaming at my doll, he had her in his hands. My grandfather was telling him to settle down or the cops would be called, but my uncle was so out of it he struck my grandpa. When he did this my grandma took me to the room. I was sobbing. But when I tell you all of this was chaos, that just what describes this night so well. My grandma and I were locked in the room. Another uncle that was present attacked my manic uncle and my mom attacked him as well, so my grandma and I could hear my grandpa trying to stop them fighting, and amidst of all of this guys, I could hear my doll singing. It was so odd and terrifying. My uncle took my doll apart. I saw her remains on the ground after my grandma and I got out the room, but the music box wasn't completely destroyed, it was stuck on the lyrics and we all fall down. It repeated it over and over again. Finally that night we packed what we could and my grandpa took me, my mom and my grandma to a Greyhound station and we made our way back to MX. My manic uncle was taken to the hospital BC of the injuries he sustained, and my other uncle went to jail, taking the blame and not letting my mom or my grandpa take that hit. Now, as an adult, My crazy uncle has passed, can't say he became a good person, he still was and is my biggest tormentor for many reasons. Anyway, I brought up this memory with my mom. BC, I loved that doll and I have considered buying her, but she's considered vintage lol. But during this convo she revealed that after the neighbor was found dead, my uncle had an insane amount of money. Like over 10K, he told everyone this money had been the settlement money of when he was shot in the ear. That's a crazy story of its own. But my mom always found it suspicious. BC, this money came to light after the neighbor had been found dead. Also, she told me that the neighbor had died from an accidental drowning. Apparently she had a really high alcohol level, and had taken a large dose of painkillers, her autopsy had revealed. My uncle had told everyone in our house that he hadn't gone over to see our neighbor Daisy, that he had went out and gotten drunk at a bar close to our house. That was absolutely not true. BC, in true fashion of me being nosy, I remember hearing him sneak back home around 1 a.m. and he come from the back where her area connected. Our neighbor Daisy was found by 9 a.m. that day by her son, and the reason why the son went over was BC mom had made a very large withdrawal from her bank and the son wanted her to tell him what she was doing with that money since he had access to her accounts. Look, my mom and I can make assumptions all we want, but we will say that my uncle had been the last person to see her alive, even though he refuted that to authorities, and my grandparents, I know I saw him come home from her house. And I guess we'll never know what truly happened that day to Mrs. Daisy. But I will never forget the doll singing those lyrics, and we all fall down over and over again. BC, that is what happened to my uncle's life. He fell horrible and did horrible things, and those caught up with him. Story, my boss fired 11 immigrants. I'm 22-year-old, and my uncle is 29-year-old. This may be too much for some people, so I advise people who have strong guts to continue to read my story. For the past couple of years, I've been having constant arguments and getting irritated every time I see with my mom. I still live with her since I'm in college right now, trying to finish my senior year. My graduation got delayed because of all the CPTSD and depression. I do see a therapist for my CPTSD, and I do have medications for my depression and ADHD, but I can't ever forgive my mom. I got essayed when I was around 10 by my uncle, who was around 17 and soon to be 18 that same year. It happened 4 times, 3 times being at home. The other time was on family vacation, when my mom invited him. It first started with him needing to see me, so he used my brother, 13M, to tell me I needed to go into my uncle's room because he needed to tell me something. I go to my uncle's room a lot with my brother to play Minecraft on his Xbox 360, so I thought it was a normal thing. My brother only did that because he got to play on his computer. Next thing you know, I was forced to give head to my uncle. I told him that I didn't want to, and he would say that he would never let me play on the Xbox again and would delete my world. As a kid, I spent a lot of time building things, and I got scared that all my hard work would go down the drain. I was hoping my brother would notice, but all he had on was his headsets and stared at the screen. It happened 2 more times until I didn't want to do it anymore. My breaking point was that I told my uncle I ate, and so I felt nauseous and he didn't care. He said that it was okay. I threw up, but I got scared to puke everywhere, so I swallowed my vomit. After that, he would tell me to go to the bathroom and spit it out. I searched on Google. Can you get pregnant swallowing semen? That's when I knew I didn't want to continue doing it any longer. I was introduced into pornography by my brother when I was 10, and he introduced me into pornography games. I didn't think of it as much as a bad idea until he got caught and got grounded by my parents. So, as all of this was happening, my inner thoughts thought that it was normal until I realized it's something that family did not do on a normal basis. When the Florida trip came, I do not remember if it was the same year or the year after all of the things happened, I was told that my uncle will join us in Florida 3 days after. I wasn't happy and got upset. The day he came, he acted normal until the night we had to sleep. The hotel, I remember it was Tiki Hiki, something like that. It had 2 bedrooms. One room had 2 beds, it was a small bed, twin, and it would be separated from the room from another. My parents and my little sister slept together in the other room. I slept in the same bed with my brother, and my uncle had the other bed that was near the door. As I was about to doze off, my uncle whispered, "Hey, come here." I was hoping it was my brother he was calling for, but my brother tapped on me annoyed and said, "He's calling for you, not me." I pretended that I didn't hear what my brother said until he said, "Just go, I'm trying to sleep," kind of attitude. I walked over and I said, "What?" My uncle told me to climb into his bed. I didn't want to, but I did because I was scared my brother would yell at me if I didn't let him sleep since my uncle kept asking for me. It was pretty late, around 11 p.m. He asked me, "Do you like lightsabers?" I said, "Yeah." He knew this because I would watch Star Wars on TV back at home. Then he said, "Do you want to touch my lightsaber?" I said, "What lightsaber?" He said, "Here," and he placed my hand on, you know what? I tried to end the conversation and hoping my brother would be awake, but he was dead asleep. He told me to jerk him off. After it was done, I was just in shock while he used the bathroom to clean himself up. I turned facing my brother and I wished I had got up to go back, but I didn't. I was in utter shock and was sad. When he came back, he put his thing between my thighs while I was facing my brother going back and forth, and at that moment, I got up and went to the other side. And I pretended to fall asleep. Nothing else happened after the trip, but I didn't know what just happened. I never told anyone, as I was told that if I told anyone, I wouldn't be able to play on the Xbox anymore. I told my friends in 6th grade, and they said, "Whoa," but they never told me to report it to the police, and so I thought it was something that I had to get over with. Until 11th grade in high school, I was in a silly drama with a girl who always thinks I spread rumors about her when I didn't even know the rumors, or she just likes to blame everything on me. That's for another time. I got called into the office, and when they tried to say that I shouldn't be spreading rumors, rumor is that this girl was on Tinder and got essayed by someone she claimed she knew for a long time and got mad. I told my ex, who was my BF at the time, what happened, and he just so told people long after we broke up. I told them that it wasn't my problem, and the school counselor said, "You don't know what happens between these closed doors, especially even when families are around." I guess that sentence hit me pretty hard because I started to cry. The girl thought I cried because I got caught or something, and till this day she still thinks that. But besides that, the counselor told everyone to leave and asked what happened. I told them, and they told me that they had to call the police. I didn't go to the rest of my class that day. My uncle got arrested, and my parents came to ask what happened. They were told by police and the school. I never wanted to tell my mom specifically because I knew her response. My dad got really mad and demanded him to get out of the house and never come back. I went to live with my dad's parents for a bit while everything got sorted out. My mom would visit me and ask if I'm okay and why I never told her. This was when I thought my prediction about telling her was wrong. I was wrong. The meeting between my parents and the school took place for a couple of days. My mom looked at me and said, "This is wasting my time. I am missing work because of this." When we got called into the room, she told them, "He's only a child, my uncle. It shouldn't happen this way." Everything was a blur after I heard her repeatedly saying that sentence. I heard mumbling from the counselors. I thought my mom would be on my side. I was wrong. During the times she would come to see me at my grandparents', I would be in the car, and my mom would tell me, "He's family." When she was little, some older man tried to touch her, but she slapped his hand and she's over it. I looked at her and said that's not the same. She told me I should forgive him because he was a kid and he even said sorry. I told her I didn't want to see her anymore and went back up to my grandparents'. My dad's parents didn't know what was happening except that I had to stay with them for 2 weeks. My mom never told anyone. I wish I did, but I didn't speak my language very well, so I never really knew how to bring it up with my broken language. After going to detectives after school and my parents taking time off work, my mom kept telling me she missed work and didn't have time for this. I got mad and told her she didn't have to come, she had to because she's my parent. The week after, she told me to drop the case. She said, "Don't trust these police or detectives. They're trying to ruin the family. You don't want him in jail, do you?" I looked at her shocked and said, "What do you mean?" She said, "If he goes to jail, the family is ruined." She tried to basically say that it'll be my fault. My grandma, mom's side, will be heartbroken for the rest of her life. I was pressured into dropping the case. I wished that I had continued the case because ever since I didn't, my life had become harder. I was struggling to go to school, and I barely passed my classes during senior year. I graduated, but it was during when pandemic started. Every time I bring it up to my mom about it, she always tries to dismiss it. I've been talking to my therapist, I've gotten different therapists, but now I have the one I constantly go to once a week. How during college I had to withdraw classes every semester and I just didn't do good. I'm planning to report him again and finish the case. It's been kind of hard. After I dropped the case, my uncle invited me to his car, and I had to because my mom forced me. He apologized and hoped that everything would be fine in the future, and he was sorry that he did that to me. He was crying, but I was just not comfortable. I told his GF about it, and she was shocked and said, "I don't want to marry him if he had done this, because what if he does it to my kid also?" Point blank, she never left him and still is together with him. I'm glad it never happened to my sister because she was interviewed also by the detectives. But I'm also so alone that I have no one. My dad felt guilty since my grandma and mom begged my uncle to stay at the house. I've moved out of that house with my mom and sister. My dad visits occasionally to a place near my school a couple of years later. My parents are deciding to move back to the house where everything happened, and I told them I can't. My mom doesn't understand that I will never forget, and she always invites him to family events, and I told her to stop, and she got upset and said the event isn't going to happen anymore. She stopped inviting him after a heated argument, and I told her I'm taking pills because of what she did and what he did to me. She told me to stop asking the pills. I never did, but she's so blind on what's happening, she keeps avoiding the topic, and whenever I see her I can't help but get mad. My mom didn't raise me, my grandparents did. She had me when she was young at 21 or 22. But she would always get me what I wanted. Even so, I can never be the same. I wanted to continue the case, and I realized that now I have limited time. My uncle plans to move out of state across the country next year. I feel pressured, and my mom kept telling me that I need to stop talking to her with an attitude. Of course I can't. Edit, the same year the case got dropped. My mom decided to buy him a birthday gift a couple of months later. Story, Shadows of the Fair, A Trip to Wilmington, Forever Inked. Hi Reddit. I'm here with a sob story like a million others, and I'd love some words of wisdom if anyone feels generous enough to give them. So my ex-partner, 26M and 26F, were together for just shy of 2 years. We've known each other since we were little kids, and I always considered him one of my best and truest friends, even once we drifted apart in high school. He is funny, clever, sweet, and attentive when he wants to be. 2 years ago, I had a dream about him out of the blue and reached out to him, wondering if he might like to have a coffee with me and catch up. He accepted and we got coffee and caught up. Apparently, he was under the impression that was our first date. I genuinely thought we were just hanging out as old friends. Once he made his feelings/intentions for me more clear, by way of an extremely romantic picnic date that he put a lot of care and effort into, I asked him to let me think about it first. And think about it I did, for almost a month. I had only ever been in messed up, toxic relationships up until that point, and I didn't want to bring that baggage into a potential partnership with someone I already had so much love and respect for. During that month, I did a lot of self-reflection, and came to the conclusion that I was more than capable of being the good, trustworthy, and loyal partner that I knew he deserved. I thought we had a really good relationship. It was far and away the best one I had ever been in. He was sweet, romantic, thoughtful, and enthusiastic about me. He had long-term goals and plans that he quickly started to include me in. I met his friends and family and did my best to honor him by being the best I could be to his loved ones. One thing that kept coming up, however, was his job. He works in a restaurant. He thinks it's fine dining. It's not. It's a high-pressure environment, to be sure, and about a year into our relationship he was given a promotion from bartender to manager. I think that's when things might have started to go downhill. The pressure got to his head almost immediately and he slowly became colder and more closed off. He is obsessed with his work and his coworkers. He had two really good friends/roommates, let's call them G and T, whom he convinced to come work at the same restaurant so they could all spend even more time together. G and T liked to party. A lot. Especially G. My ex often said that G was a bad influence on him and that his behavior worried him deeply. They would go out with maybe 10 to 12 other coworkers to the college bars in our town, we are not college age anymore, and get drunk maybe 2 or 3 times a week. I'm not much of a drinker myself, so I tried to keep up with them at first, but over time I stopped trying as hard, and my ex also stopped inviting me to go out with them. I also started getting the impression that those coworkers were, not exactly good people. So there was that too. We had more than a couple disagreements on that topic. Anyway, up until a couple weeks ago, I thought things were basically good between us. He always said our relationship was perfect, which was confusing, because obviously no one is perfect, but also because we had definitely had our fair share of conflict, usually about his tendency towards selfishness and childishness. But he always had so many lovely things to say about me and about us and about our future together, so I tended to focus more on his words than his actions. My mistake, obviously. Well, he cheated on me. With one of his coworkers. A girl I was always nice to and never thought twice about. They went out to a bar in our town, had some fun, and went home together. When he told me several days after the fact, I was completely shocked and for a moment I truly believed that he was joking. A fucked up joke, to be sure, but a joke, right? No. At first he tried to blame it on her, she came on to him and he just froze up and didn't stop her. Al asked him to clarify, did she actually assault you? He said no. He admitted that he chose to participate. I asked if he was drunk. He wasn't. He did try to throw G&T under the bus as well, basically implying that they had encouraged him to have sex with her, and had been filling his ear with misogynistic poison. When I asked him why, essentially, it came down to she was just there. Damn. Stupidly, I kept trying. I should have kept my dignity and never spoken to him again. But unfortunately, I love this person very, very much. So instead, I flipped out, crying and pleading and begging him to let me fix this somehow, that I loved him too much, that he can't do this to me, etc., etc. He told me too many times to count that it was the worst mistake of his life, that he loves me more than life itself, and that he would do absolutely anything to make this right. He swore that he would quit his job, move out of his apartment with G&T, and never speak to any of his old coworkers again. And for some reason, I believed him. Up until last Tuesday night. We were texting about regular life stuff instead of fighting, and everything actually felt 90% normal for the first time since he told me that he had cheated on me. I asked if it was awkward between him, the G&T, since they're all still living together for now. He said no, it's been all good between the three of them. That already had my eyebrow raised since he had been talking about how they were terrible people who he never wanted to have anything to do with ever again. I clarified, so you're not cutting them off for now? And then he told on himself. He said it's coworker's last night out, I wanted to come say bye. Huh? So he was actively out with his coworkers right at that moment. I know that whole crew of people always goes to the same bar on Tuesday night. The same bar where he was when he decided to cheat on me. Al asked him if the girl he cheated on me with was there too. He didn't reply. After almost an hour, I called him. I asked him to please tell me he was not at the bar I thought he was at. He confirmed that he was. Al asked him if she was there. He confirmed that she was, but said he wasn't talking to her, so it shouldn't be a big deal. Right. He repeated that he just wanted to say goodbye to this other coworker who's moving away. Al asked if he wanted to come say goodbye to me too. He begrudgingly said I guess I'll leave, which honestly made me really mad, so I said no, stay, have fun, do whatever you want to do. Well, that's exactly what he did. He stayed there. So I showed up. Duh. And who should I see standing outside but the very same girl he cheated on me with? I won't go into details, but suffice to say, I put the fear of God in that pathetic woman. She tried to walk away and I followed her into the bar. I lost her for a moment, turned around, and saw him sitting there right in the center of all his toxic little friends/coworkers, the ones he tried to blame this whole situation on. And her standing in between us. I locked eyes with him and we just stared at each other. I mouthed, "Really?" And he just shrugged. He motioned for me to follow him outside to talk. We went outside. I said, "Are you serious? This is how it's going to be?" And he responded, "I just needed one night." I was completely dumbstruck. After a moment, I just said it was cool knowing him and started to leave. I turned around just in time to see him roll his eyes and go back into the bar. I haven't heard one word from him since, although I can see he's reading all my messages. Does anyone have a couple words of wisdom or strength? I realized as I was writing this all out that there's probably nothing more for me to do. All day long I'm screaming at him in my mind for betraying me so badly, but I can't think of a single thing worth actually saying to him. I don't know why I want him to keep trying and keep talking to me when I know there's nothing left for me with him. The trust has not just been broken, it's been destroyed. So why do I still want him to try? I can't believe the person that I was in love with could ever treat me this way, or that the story we've been sharing our whole lives could end with him disrespecting me so badly, just to ghost me afterwards. I feel like throwing up and I'm constantly shaking with adrenaline or anger or maybe both. I just want to talk to him, which is insane considering everything that has happened. I don't know why I would give him another opportunity to lie to me. TLDR, my partner who I have known since we were little kids cheated on me, lied about it, and then disrespected me to my face while betraying my trust all over again. For some reason, I still want him to talk to me and try to fix it, even though I know it can't be fixed. What's wrong with me? Story: I, 27M, am breaking up with my girlfriend, 29F, due to past infidelity. Hello, everybody. I have something to finally get off my chest that happened on the cusp of my 18th birthday when I was sexually assaulted. I am now 22, and it's something that I have only told a select few people because I know no one would believe me, but what the hell, I don't even care anymore. I just finally want to get it off my chest. When I was 17 a day before turning 18, I got pretty drunk as I was celebrating over the phone with my friend at the time, since this was during COVID. My living situation was pretty weird as my parents left to live in another country when I was 14. I decided to stay in the US to finish high school, so I bounced around many places living with friends. I did live with my girlfriend at the time and her family for 2 years, but once we broke up, I moved out and came to live with a family who resembled mine a lot. They were Hispanic, loving, with 3 sisters and 1 brother, and they resembled my siblings who left the country, not only in appearance but in how they acted. So, I came to love them as my own family to the point I called them my siblings and their mother. I called my mom as she was exactly like my mom in every way, only more outspoken and very tough with love and protecting her kids. This was the end of my sophomore year, and from there to my senior year, they were my family. I knew they weren't really my family by blood, but they saw me as if their mom birthed me and that we truly were family. The mom, let's call her Maria, never treated me differently. On many occasions, she and I would have Mother-son days out, and she would hug me when I cried because I missed my real family. She showed me love and support in every way possible. I say this because for a while during COVID, it was just her, my little stepsister, Vivi, 10 years old, her older daughter, let's call her Michelle, and me. We all got super close during this time, like inseparable, and this made me even swear they really were my family. Maria had another daughter, my best friend in high school, Jasmine, 18F, but she lived in another city after high school. Jasmine would come to visit occasionally, and to show how close I had gotten to her family, I got even closer to her bigger sister than her. One day, all of us were at home except Maria, 45F. It was just Vivi, 10F, Jasmine, 18F, Michelle, 24F, and me, doing our own thing. I was drinking in my room on FaceTime. I remember being pretty drunk, and the rest of the night is hazy. But since I was home, I felt safe as we would all drink together from time to time. The next thing I remember is waking up around 1 to 2 a.m. on the couch with my stepmom beside me, passed out. I embraced her because I saw her as my mom. It's important to state that all my friends said how hot and gorgeous my stepmom was and that they would jump on her at any given chance, but not me. Yes, she was beautiful, but she was my motherly figure and someone I saw as only my safe place and my loving stepmother who was always there for me at my lowest and to cheer me up at my highest. I never saw her as my friends would. I went back to sleep still drunk, and about 30 minutes later, I woke up to someone grabbing my private part. I became completely sober. I opened my eyes and saw that it was my stepmom. I kept saying in my head, "No, this can't be true. I must be sleeping. This is not happening." I repeated it over and over again, thinking it was just a dream. I know people would ask why I didn't stop it or tell her something or get up, but she was an amazing mom. When she drank, it was her way or no way. Also, the only people in the house were her daughters and me, and I was the non-family member when it came down to the truth. If I said she started it and she said it was a lie or that I was the one who sexually assaulted her, would they believe their loving mother whom they've known their whole lives, or a kid they've only known for a few years and don't truly know 100%? That's why I decided to just close my eyes and act like I was asleep. As she kept going on with my private part, she grabbed my hand and put it in her pants, forcibly making my fingers go inside her. I made my whole body go limp. I still remember how she grabbed my fingers and put them in with hers in her privates. She just went to town with my body and my fingers inside her. The whole time, I was super sober and internally crying and praying to God to make this go away. Then I blacked out. I don't know if she ended up having sex with my body or not, but I was completely drained, balls and all, when I woke up. I dreaded accepting the fact that what happened last night was real. To my horror, my mom was still laying beside me on the couch with my hand in her pants. I slowly pulled it out as to not wake her, and about 5 minutes later, she got off the couch and went to lay down in her room. I was completely horrified, especially because I used to always say, men can't be raped or assaulted sexually because they'll love it regardless of the situation. Plus, during my high school and after years, I was extremely addicted to having sex every day, but this grossed me out, disgusted me, horrified me, and made me see her in a different light. To me, it was like my own mom had just taken advantage of me. To this day, that family doesn't know of their mother's own doing to ruin what I thought was my family. I had to make it seem like I turned into an asshole one day and had to do them dirty. The whole time, it broke my heart to leave my little baby sister, whom I helped with homework, school, watched scary and funny movies with, taught multiplication, and made breakfast with every day. I just left one day out of the blue, and to this day, I never could tell her. Especially my best friend Jasmine from high school, who introduced me to her family, who was her daughter. After I was assaulted, I didn't leave right away but instead a year after because I had nowhere else to go. During that time, Jasmine and I became boyfriend and girlfriend in everything but name. Her mother would have killed me if she knew we ended up liking each other and becoming intimate, as she told me she would go to prison if I got with her daughter. To this day, I remember how Jasmine called me with so much hatred when I left, and I couldn't bear to tell her why. I didn't want her mom to go to jail for my little sister's sake and for her sake, because they would never believe me. Their mother was always seen as such an example and would never be capable of such a thing. It has now been 4 years, and it still kills me that I made them see me as the bad guy, only to not tell them the truth. I now live in a different country and wish every day to tell them, not for reconciliation, but to finally get it off my chest. But I know they will ask why I waited so long to tell them or why I'm stooping so low to lie about something so serious that couldn't have possibly happened. What hurts the most, and I haven't ever told anyone this, is that Jasmine and I were becoming serious and almost were going to tell her mom. Now Jasmine is pregnant with someone I can only think of as my replacement. I just left her heartbroken and alone, and it could have been my kid she was going to have. Story: husband cheated on me. I'm at a loss and don't know what to do. I just feel completely empty inside. My husband travels a lot for work. He's usually gone about half the month or sometimes more. He confessed to me last week that he has been struggling with watching porn while he's gone and he wants to get professional help. He wanted me to know to have my support. Last night, he told me it wasn't just porn. When he was on a work trip to Vegas, he was watching porn and one thing led to another. Long story short, I guess whatever he was watching piqued his curiosity and he ended up reaching out to someone on Reddit and got a blowjob, and it also happened to be a dude. Honestly, I don't even care about what that could possibly mean. The gender of the person matters much less to me than the act itself. This happened 3 weeks ago and he just told me. We've been together for 4 years and have 2 kids, a 1.5-year-old and a 1-month-old. He's willing to do whatever it takes to stay together and fight for us. He has appointments for therapy already and we're going to start couples therapy too. I don't know what I'm looking for in here. Building trust back feels impossible right now, but I want to try for our babies if nothing else. I know what advice I would give to someone in my shoes, but it hurts too much to think about right now. I'm just so angry at this entire situation. I feel fucking crazy. I'm so mad at him for ruining my vision of our entire future. Story: the government put a school for children with paranormal abilities deep in the mountains of Alaska. Something went horribly wrong. So basically 5 to 6 months ago my girlfriend cheated on me with my own boss. It was terrible and soon became the most embarrassing thing of my life. I worked at a supermarket and with everyone's boring lives it soon became the talk of everything and really made me struggle mentally. Key things I'll add before I explain why I took revenge out on him. My boss was in his mid-40s, married with children and would boast about cheating on his wife to the work boys, with the way he would describe his main tactics as trauma bonding. My girlfriend had BPD and was easily manipulated and persuaded by him to receive fake promises and promise to faster promotion. We are both 20 to 21, so basically I set up a fake Facebook profile and acted on it for a week or 2 before I joined the local community page, doing post and responding to comments he was interacting with. I made it out like I was a newly single mom and new to the area. After 1 month, before getting his attention, I slid into his DMs and started messaging him and flirty with him. I already knew a lot about him in terms of hobbies, interest and sporting teams, so I made everything easily relatable to form a strong trusting connection. I had him hooked. I had him moved over to Snapchat and started catfishing him with photos from online. In exchange he started sending me nude photos exposing it all. I saved them all in my chat and left them there to build that trust. I also let HM do the same to the photos I sent. After I had enough to ruin him late, I changed my username and name on both platforms to a younger female staff member who used to work at the shop and screenshotted everything. I saved over 20 photos of what he was sending me and lodged a complaint with HR for the company. I even faked a Gmail email to make the user more believable, and when they called me on the phone, I had a female friend take the phone so it sounded very legit. Work for a large company, so you have the option not to do it in person. I also sent the screenshots of our messages and sent the nude photos of him cheating and sent them to his wife, his mom and his sister. I truly wanted to ruin this man. I wasn't done then. I printed a bunch of posters with "Best Chewbacca impersonation wins $100" with his phone number listed below. I couldn't imagine how many phone calls he would have received. Anyways, to date, I have been told he currently has been terminated from the job from people inside the shop, and that he is also judging off the conversation with his wife on FB. She has kicked him out. I do not feel one bit of guilt at all. Maybe I'm psychotic, but nothing can describe the pure hatred I have for that man. As for my ex, she tried to get back with me, but I have left her in the dark and I'm much happier without her. I won't be seeking any revenge on her. Bye and see you again in the next videos and stories.